I've helped multiple people with their budgets. I'm really good at budgeting. For whatever reason, I just have a knack for it or whatever. And there's this person I encountered who was really angry because they were struggling financially, and basically he was like, you know, it really sucks. I shouldn't even have to be in this position. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I should be able to spend what I need to, because when my parents died, then I would be able to just pay everything off. And I'm like, oh, were your parents super poor? And he's like, no, they own a 130-acre farm, and they have system where they sell to like grocery stores and stuff and everything, and they already have it all set up and everything, and you know, they don't have me in the will to inherit it. They gave it to my cousin because my cousin wants to live there and, you know, continue the family business, and I wouldn't live there. I would sell it, and so they won't put me in the will. I was like thinking in my head, I wouldn't put you in the will either. This person, I tried to work through the numbers with them, and I tried to help them understand a little bit, but they just didn't understand, even when I tried to help them. I didn't say everything as clearly as I'm going to say it now, but I would not have left them that farm either. They did not see its worth. They wanted to sell it to a corporation and get a lump sum and pretend like their bad money habits that they had already been exhibiting wouldn't be perpetuated with that lump sum, and they wouldn't just lose it all. And B, that they wanted to pretend that they understood how much value was in that property, and they did not understand at all. I tried to explain a little bit. I said, well, your parents are probably thinking about, you know, the family history of the land, and that it's fully paid off. It's housing security for anyone who lives there, and it's land that returns money. It pays for itself in maintenance, it pays for itself in property taxes, and then there's a profit on top of that. It provides work to the workers who work there, and housing for the people who live there and work on the land, because that's how their parents set it up. And your cousin wants to come and have housing security, and your cousin wants to come and have a business security. They were not interested in hearing that. And maybe later they thought about it, maybe they never ever accepted it, who knows. But in reality, that person thought that that land was worth such and such amount, because that's how much an appraiser would have estimated the value at. That appraising value would have been based on like a single family house, and would have maybe been on like, oh, the business might have this sort of a worth. That's not true though. There's several things that this person's parents did right. First of all, it's generational. It has not had any like debt, mortgage, or anything on it since his great-grandparents. This is a generational inheritance. So even besides all the money value, this has a historical value. This property had a worth that was sweat and effort and investment of hours and hours into this land. But even besides, even if you're like, I hate my family history, it was all terrible, whatever, even if you say that, okay, it's still 130 acres that this person would have sold to a corporation who probably would have filled it with, you know, cookie cutter houses and paved streets and destroyed all that nature. Like, in reality, they don't care about the farm. They don't care about the property being, like, you know, quote unquote wholesome. Like, it has a few houses on it that are spread out. That's not going to make them the most money to leave those houses like that. They want to have houses on it that are right next to each other with teeny tiny yards to get as many houses in there as possible, to sell as many houses as possible. And it would destroy all of that. It would completely obliterate not just the nature, but possibly the whole community, doing that to that property. On top of that, it provides food to people to eat, and it provides jobs for the people who work there. And so all of those people would lose their job, and all of the food would stop being, food going out to feed people from a farm. It would be so completely detrimental. And so this person's seeing this corporation offer a value, and they think that's actually how much it's worth because that's what the estimation was. But in actuality, there's so much more worth on top of that. If they didn't like farming, all they had to do was live in the main house, hire their cousin, give their cousin one of the houses on the property, and have their cousin run everything. Their cousin has housing security still, has income from the business still, the business still exists still, and the person who inherited it, who didn't like farming, has housing security and has profit from the business. Literally handed to them if they would just be willing to see it that way. They could be set for life by having money coming in every month or every year, and that money being, something that's more reliable than a lump sum that can just get drained and spent, and a couple years later you're like, man, where did all that money go? The parents were leaving an asset. A lump sum can be an asset or it can be problematic, but something that is a business that's already established, you don't have to do any work to get it up and going and running. The supply chain and everything is already set up. That's tremendous. They did not see its value. And I've seen a lot of people who are more on the bottom half of earners, and they don't understand the value of what they've got. I've seen a lot of people sell their house and they think, hey, cool, I got this money from selling my house and it appreciated in value, and that's awesome, and I'm so excited, and I've got this money, and a corporation now owns it and is renting it out for double what their mortgage would have been. Like, people don't understand how to see investment value, and it's not their fault. I feel like it's sort of something that's intentionally not taught to people who are more poor. You're not meant to be educated on it, so you're not aware of how you're getting cheated. You're getting scammed. Sometimes you're in a desperate strait and you're like, holy crap, I'm so far in debt. I would absolutely take that lump sum, get out of the debt, get out of the fear and the constant pressure, and be able to have some sort of freedom. Debt is a hard thing, and that can feel emotional. And sometimes it really is just so stressful that you just can't take it anymore. And that doesn't mean you're doing something bad because you can't take the pressure and you can't take the stress. It just is unfortunate, because there's always going to be a business who's happy to take advantage of your emotional distress. They're thrilled. They will pay you a fair value gladly, because the fair value is not based on how much a rental profit would be from your property. A fair value is not based on how much your business that you feel like you're constantly on the edge of going bankrupt, and you're hardly managing it because you're trying to do everything by yourself. Your business is actually easy money for them. They can afford to hire a couple of people that you couldn't afford to hire, and suddenly the business is flourishing. All it needed was that little push that you couldn't afford to do, and you were stressing yourself out trying to do everything. They can just get rid of competition. You probably could have gotten more for it, and they're thrilled that they only had to pay that small of an amount to get rid of a competitor. Like, they are business savvy, and you're struggling trying to get to some savvy. And some of it is just learning mistakes, and some of it is that you just had no idea. This person, their budget, sometimes you look at someone's budget and you can learn a lot about them. Like, you can understand a lot of where they place value, and you can understand a lot of what they're using as a coping method for their stress. This person it does not surprise me at all that they just wanted to sell their parents' property that had been a generational property and had a business already established on it. But it is sad that they couldn't seem to grasp why that wouldn't be the best plan. It's something that used to get done, especially a lot in Europe, where, say there was a wealthy business-owning person, they would not leave an even amount of inheritance to all their children. They would pick a child who seemed to have the most business savvy, or perhaps their eldest, or whatever kid seemed the most responsible, the most capable once they were an adult, and they would leave almost everything to them, and then a livable amount or whatever to the others. It used to be that they did this on purpose because this way the family business or the properties, or however you want to say it, whatever assets the family had kept staying in the family generation after generation, and they kept gaining the profit and the value on that. In the United States, we have a very big thing on, oh, well, I'll either leave my inheritance to whoever I like the best, or else I'll just split it out even. Neither of those is business savvy, and neither of those are actually going to perpetuate any kind of security for future generations of your family. It's why people could be like, oh yeah, I can go ask for help from my rich uncle back in history. Or, oh, I'm the cousin and I have to come because the reading of the will, I'm still getting something. Because it was a family inheritance. It was a family deal. And it used to be that families married families. You didn't just go and, talk to someone and get to know them for several years and then eventually marry them. You went and you met someone whose family was very compatible with your family. And so they would hope that you would be compatible with their kid, and you as an individual helped unite those two families and create strength for the families as a whole. And you learned to live with each other, you learned to compromise with each other, and the whole learning process actually helped you have a pretty long marriage. Some arranged marriages were forced. I am not in any way in support of that at all, but a lot of arranged marriages were very, from a non-emotion standpoint, it was a very logic-based thing. And I'm not saying that there can't be any feelings in it when you get married, or when you think about like a business, or when you think about your home, or when you think about anything like that. I'm just saying, try to also involve the logic, crunch the numbers, make sure what different aspects or avenues you may not have looked at yet. Have you looked at how much where your house is near certain things, and maybe it would make an excellent Airbnb? How much profit would there be? Don't be so quick to sell off an asset if you have one. Don't be so quick to be angry if someone doesn't want you to inherit an asset if you don't understand how to utilize that asset and get its full worth out. Or at least hire someone who does. And be more quick to create a conglomerate yourself with the people around you. We like to nickname them like communes and stuff, but in actuality, if you've got, say, a sibling that you trust, maybe you don't trust your parents, but you do trust your sibling, like, go in together on understanding that you're there for each other. Don't be so far removed from the concept of being a community, because being a community helped people during the Great Depression tremendously. There's the story that goes around all the time of during the Great Depression, people would default on their farm and the bank would go to auction it off, and people would go and buy it for like $1 and sell it back to the farmer who had lost it, like in the community, so that everyone could try to keep their farms and keep their property. And they came together as a community. Being a community who says, you know what, there is more value in all of us having a job and housing security than getting a lump sum from this corporation. You gotta have people respect. If you lose everything, but you have someone who would let you stay on their couch or give you their spare guest room for a year, rent-free, you're not homeless. You have an asset. It's an invisible asset. It's not one that's gonna add to your net worth, but it's one that's a hecka more reliable and a hecka more understanding. Most of the corporations are using a lot of computer algorithms and AI and stuff to handle a lot of business things. If you try to say, you know, go to Blackstone and say, hey, look, I couldn't pay rent this month. My kid, you know, ended up in the hospital. I've got this massive hospital bill I've got to pay. Can I please pay you half this month and then I'll pay you rent and a half next month, you know, and you know, I've never come to you like this before. You know, I will pay you back. You know where I live. You can come get me if I didn't pay you back. I've got to take care of my kid. Blackstone's not going to listen to that. Blackstone's not even going to hear it because Blackstone's not even like remotely interested. All they care about is money, 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 money. You got a neighbor next to you and you're like, please, can you give me, you know, $1,500 toward rent. Rent's $3,000 for my house, or even my mortgage. And my kid got hurt. I've got this massive hospital bill I've got to pay. I earn this much a month. I will pay you back next month. I've never done this to you before, but we have cookouts every, like, you know, couple of weeks. We hang out. We actually, you know, have families that are friends with each other. Please, can you help me just this one time? They'll probably help you. If they can afford to. Caveat, if they can afford to. The point is they might be able to help you in another way. They might be able to say, look, I ain't got that kind of cash flow, but I'll tell you what I can do. Your kid's gonna have to be home from school. You can't afford the childcare for that, right? And you're like, yeah. So instead, hey, you know what? My wife, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's got the baby, but your kid's just gonna be laying around watching TV because they broke their leg or whatever. Let's work something out so that you don't have to pay the childcare costs so that you can pay your mortgage this month. You can pay your rent this month. People find clever ways to do things, and when you're in an emotional state, your brain isn't always as quick to function, and someone else who's not in that emotional state can see from multiple perspectives and can see things that you're just totally oblivious to because you're stressed out. You're so stressed out that you can't think straight, that you can't see clearly. And so they can come up with ideas that you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You know, like, they might not be able to give you money, but maybe they grow a garden in the backyard and they're like, you know what, we can use some of the garden food that we've got a little extra, you know, food stamps this month. Maybe we'll try to make some meals, bring you some casseroles or whatever, and try to help reduce your grocery bill cost. Like, there's things that people can do to help each other that corporate America cannot do to help you. Corporate America, for the most part, is a scam artist. They're looking to gain as much profit for themselves as possible. And if you feel like a deal is too good to be true, if you feel like, wow, I can't believe this is awesome, this is happening right now, and it's coming from a corporation, you're probably getting taken advantage of in some way. And they're really enjoying your emotional response. See the worth and the value in the assets that are not owned by corporations. See the value and the asset in being part of a family and being part of a group. It doesn't even have to be blood relation. Being part of people that can rely on each other. Be someone reliable that other people can go to you and be like, you know what? I need help. And you're like, okay. Don't be one of those people who's like, oh God, they need help moving. How can I get out of this? Be one of those people who's like, oh, they need help moving. Carrying boxes is so horrible. I hate lifting furniture. But someday I might need to move. Someday I might need help with something and it's not moving. I'm fostering a relationship with this person. Hopefully someday they're going to remember that I helped them with that and they're going to be more inclined to help me. Life is going to happen and there are ups and downs in life. Things will happen at some point where you need help. You could be super rich and still at some point you're going to need help. Just see what worth is in things. Be creative with the worth of things. Don't just be so quick to be like, I just want a lump sum. That's how a lot of lottery winners and game show winners and things like that lose out on some of their winnings. If you look at the little fine print, it's like, you could win, $1 million, or, that's paid over a certain amount of time. If you don't want to be paid like monthly or yearly to get to that $1 million, you can take a lump sum of such and such amount. And the corporation gets to keep the extra money. They're thrilled because you had an emotional response that cost you. Try to keep crunching numbers and using logic and seeing whatever assets and whatever resources are in your life for what they're truly worth, and not just what a corporation would appraise them as.